Yeah.
Um, I think on the recording I was still muted, so I'll repeat that. I will first go a short Q&A on judging in and of itself. Then I'm going to talk about how to act during the deliberation and how chairs like you. Three, I will highlight a small thing on feedback for CAs because we want to make Piotr happy. And finally, just some old man wisdom on things I would have loved before going to judge UDC for the first time. Cool. So first, let's do a Q&A on judging in and of itself. I got one question sent in, which is from Navid. It's paraphrased, but it's basically how do I weigh strong mechanization that has a very weak impact versus when the mechanization is weak but the impact is strong. So, for example, one team claims a big impact, explains the impact very well, but it's contingent on a sloppy mechanism versus mechanized well, but impact is very unclear. I'm going to give you the law student answer, which is it depends. But then the question is, what does it depend on? Basically, it's going back to the smallest set of assumptions, which is what we usually go over in judging. So ask yourself, how significant are the gaps that are made in the mechanization versus the things that are made in the impact? So, for example, I'm still somewhat sure there is some impact, but the mechanization really has problems. That's one tiebreaker I can use. But secondly, you also wanted to look, do other teams engage with this? And if so, to what degree? Because that can also, the negative material, you can credit it to the same degree as the positive material. But to follow up, because it ties nicely to the workshop, this is foreshadowing a few slides. Tell your chair that this is what your weighing is likely to come down to. Congrats, you're being very specific on that. So you're already probably in a stage that the chair is going to be very happy with you. David, it was your question, so maybe you have follow-up questions on this?
No. Like I also when I asked the question, I was like, yeah, it probably just depends, kinda. But this is also something just I struggle with because what ends up happening is sometimes I get feedback that I focus too much on one or the other. So one time I do like impacts, or sometimes I do mechanization, like prefer it more, and then I think just bounce around, right? So whatever the last feedback I got, I try to focus on the other thing, and then sometimes mess it up the other way. But it is what it is. It's just I
I
think getting used to it a bit.
I understand that can be annoying. I would posit that I don't think you should particularly focus on one over the other, because it's the same with that some arguments are just easier to prove than others, and with some arguments, if you don't fully prove the burden, probably a judge can still see, yeah, I know where this is going. Maybe because the argument is very stock, so we tend to scrutinize it less, which we should, but we don't in practice. Um, or this can be because some circuits just overall tend to have a stronger emphasis on one or the other. So I don't know if this is still the case, but I know that until a few years ago at least, the Israeli circuit really tended to have more focus on proving the argument rather than impacting it. So these are things that can come into play. I think at that moment, at the moment, you are able to outline that, hey, I think this of this case, I think this of that case. Probably a case can be made for either way. At this point, gun to my head, I would say this, but I would need XYZ to be persuaded. Other way, you're probably already doing a very good job.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
All right. Then are there other just in general questions on things you struggle with when it comes to judging? It will not be like the main focus of this workshop, but I'd be happy for you to go over stuff that you struggle with.
One thing is just on allocating speaks. Because I've been told quite often that I tend to have a too literal or somewhat conservative interpretation of the speaker scale. So to what extent should you like just read the literal descriptions as they are in the manual and then just try to match the speech to that? And to what extent are you allowed to deviate from that when you're like aware the circuit norm is probably different from the manual here? In that case, which do you follow?
Yeah. So I think one problem with the speaker scale is that it's still relatively vague. Like, for example, I know that the 83 bracket talks about arguments need to have very strong responses to be taken out. But then again, what is a strong response? So I would say, given that the speaker scale aims at guiding you, helping you, but is not like something that you can fully apply to each and every speech. Also, because they say like you need to interpret it holistically. There are different facets of the speaker skill, and it might tick one of the boxes, but not all of them. Um, the best usually is to go about the material that you have to compare the speech to. So try to think of, well, I think this is, if you're not sure, what I usually do is I think, well, this was 78 or 79. That's also where the brackets differ. I just like to think of what were the times that I did give 78. Did I think that this speech did better than the other one? That can usually help. Like, obviously, I'm not saying here, yeet the speaker skill out of the way and trust other speeches that you've given speaks before, but it's a way that can help. So yeah, I mean, if you've heard consistently, you've taken the speaker skill too literal and therefore have given too low speaks. Well, if you hear that consistently, then maybe introspect a bit if this is the case. But to be honest, sometimes also people can just get very salty if you think your speaks were too low. That's a bit of a yappy answer to your question, but does this help?
No, yeah, thank you very much. That was helpful.
Yeah,
I have a
I cannot see facial expressions, so need
yeah.
to follow up. Yes, David.
Sorry, this is a bit unrelated, but like, for yours, did you guys get like a judge CV slash like place to put in experience form? Because I was told it was going to be sent later. Maybe I missed it. And it's getting really close, and I'm just a bit anxious of like maybe I missed it. Or also, there's supposed to be a judge test. I don't know. I'm really unsure.
I don't think I received it, but since I am on one of the teams, namely the language team, I'm not sure if I'm getting it sent to anyway. When in doubt, maybe just send an email.
Yeah, I'll do that. Sorry,
I
it's
just
an unrelated
don't know.
question, but like I was just like,
That's fine.
maybe you guys would know.
We're just vibing here with people that are going to judge at Euros, so that's fine.
It's fine. I think they haven't said that. Like, at least I haven't felt anything, so it's fine.
By the way, will all you guys be judging at Euros?
I will be there
We are.
judging. Yeah.
Not.
Awesome. You're not that. Okay. Sad. Great. Any other questions on just judging itself? Things you run into? I don't hear anyone right now. If later on you still have questions, feel free to shoot. Let's talk about the deliberation and how to nail it. Also, I use some very nice stocky images. I have no idea who this person is. Okay, the deliberation. I will just talk about the 3 steps of deliberation. The first being the initial call. The second, the larger part of it, taking part in the discussion. And step 3, your final call. Let's talk about the initial call. So, one thing I cannot stress enough is that no one expects this to be perfect. The reason being, you only have like 2, maybe 3 minutes if you have a very generous chair until you're gonna ask for this. You're being then expected to see through an entire debate that may have lasted like an hour. And there is a reason why we don't do why we don't do individual ballots, but we do consensus vote. It's just because we don't think that this is the best way to adjudicate BP debates. Even if you're a solo chair, then you have lots and lots of time, right? Because you don't have the deliberation at all. So no one expects your initial call to be perfect. It's just to facilitate the logical foundation for discussion, because you know where each person is standing, rather than having to go all over the place. This is just to give your chair some stuff to hold on to. So don't stress this one. A mistake that a lot of people make is thinking my initial call was very wrong compared to my chair's initial call, so I fucked up around. This is not true. I have given very hailing feedback about wings that had widely different calls from me, but still did a very good job in the discussion. Don't stress too much about the initial call. I also want to flag, give your honest call. Not just go for the desirable call. So for example, the chair asks for the call. The other panelist has a call that is widely different to this one that's on the screen. So for example, the other panelist says, I have the first to OO, the second to CO, the third to OG, and the fourth to CG. And I realize, my call is very different. A mistake that I've seen a lot of people make is do A, they completely change their call, or B, they just completely chicken out of giving anything like a call. Don't do that. Firstly, because you probably will not be able to articulate that call to the best degree. But also, the other panelists just might be wrong. You may actually have the better call here, and you have seen stuff that they have not seen. What I've also seen a lot of wings doing is they give their initial call. The other panelists also give their initial call. I give my initial call. I ask the first panelist, like, could you justify this part because you're the minority there? And then they say, oh, did I say that? I actually meant, and then end up repeating my call. This is the deliberation equivalent of my dog ate my homework. You won't be seen as very trustworthy. Usually we see through this, so don't do that stuff. Just own your call. Because even though you may have a different call, you may have seen certain stuff that I may not disagree on, but I can still believe it is reasonable to have that take. I just need to convince you otherwise. I'd much rather have that than a panelist that gives me nothing at all that I can actually deal with, because they just stick to very generic stuff. So own your call, own your judging. The better you actually are going to have a discussion, and maybe, I don't know, you might end up convincing your chair to some degree even. It's also fair to say that you're not certain about certain parts. So for example, I have this little connection mark between CG and CO because, I don't know, I thought that one is going to be relatively close. That's completely fair game. Other questions about the phase of giving your initial call? Cool. I'll go to about taking part in the discussion. Firstly, obviously, and this is something I don't think I have to explain, but do this pairwise. Just do two teams at the same time. If it's about OG and OO, don't start talking about the CG contributions yet. But this one is important. On the chair's questions only. If the chair says, so firstly, I would like you to talk about the clash that is the principal clash on top half. I don't know, something like that. Even though you might think this is the wrong question to ask, because you thought that the principal clash was relatively minor compared to the practical clash, still go around that. In Dutch we have a phrase, and I don't know if it works in English, don't go for the two captains on one ship. Just let the chair steer the deliberation in the way that they want to. If you believe they've asked their own questions, you can briefly flag, I felt that the other one is too important, but I will answer it nonetheless. If the chair is going to be a douche about it, just flag in the feedback and you'll be fine. I'm going to now talk about 6 traits that are going to make chairs love you. This sounds very clickbaity. 3 take place in the discussion itself. 3 take place in take your final call. Oh wait, I actually think it's 5 traits in the end. I didn't change that part. The first is efficiency. The second is specificity. The third is responsivity. The fourth, reasonability. And the fifth, transparency. Let's talk about efficiency. I often see, when I'm CAing, I see feedback like this. The wing is smart, but a yapper. They are narratively repeating cases while barely giving their insights. Be efficient. We've all heard the cases. So only start repeating the cases if it's really needed. When is it really needed? Well, let's say a team was very, very unclear all over the place. Maybe the team had an accent that you found hard to follow. Then just be honest that you found it hard to track the speaker. Or maybe you were in some random ass school in Sofia that had very echoey rooms. No shade, Nia. In all other cases, just focus on the contentions that made you give it to one team or another. You don't need to repeat every single mechanism. Just explain it in the way that you would explain it after a close round, for example. That's usually the thing I'd like to go about. Because when a team comes to you after a close round, you're not going to repeat what the entire cases were. You're just going to give them the short version. That's also the mindset you probably need when it comes to deliberation, because you need to be efficient. Chairs will probably get very nervous if you talk for more than a minute, because you're going to have like 15 minutes total. Sometimes it may be even shorter because the teams left the room not on time, or because the round started later and the runner is already knocking on the door. So at the moment that you are talking more than a minute, the chair will probably go like, and we still need to do other contributions. In 15 minutes, a lot needs to happen. Even if you don't give the perfect nuanced version of this, efficiency usually matters. What I've seen good panelists do is they say, I think it comes down to this, this, and that. I can go on that part more into detail if you want me to. I will now focus on this because I think it was the most important. Beautiful. Because at that moment, the wing has given me 1, clarity on what they felt was the most important. 2, they have shown me that they're able to also comment on the other things if I want them to. But 3, have not wasted my time while I'm being nervous about the time limit that I'm on. Efficiency is something that chairs really, really value. This obviously doesn't mean that you should stretch it further and just go talk very much into bullet points, not explaining any parts. No, just focus on the most important stuff and give that a fair bit of attention. But efficiency is key there. Other questions about efficiency?
Maybe I do want to ask. So usually when we have comparisons, and basically we need to weigh a certain point between two teams. Do we need to like list all the reasons that both teams like? I get what you mean, but like I think it's feedback I have received some advices on. Like just people find it more convincing when you just work not just simply with like your own weighing, but when you base your weighing on the case, if that makes sense. So like chairs kind of like do want you to repeat this so they can kind of like afterwards say it in the OA and people can buy them. So to what extent is this rule viable when doing maybe like case comparisons or like just clash point comparisons?
So basically, it's the question that if the teams work in a certain clash and one team gives certain pieces of weighing, and you need to explain whether or not you credit these parts or not, or how should I see this?
When you explain like certain clash points within the debate, it doesn't matter what it is for. Do you need to like, as a panelist, also list the reasons that were given by both teams, or can you just go off and explain? I think like OG goes above OO because I think there was this significant logical gap within OO's case, or do I also need to list still the reasons that they provided me within the comparison?
Okay. So I'm not sure if the recording can hear your part, so I'm just repeating it, and also as a check if I'm interpreting the question well. So let's say your main reason for OG beating OO is there is a certain logical gap in OO, but OO also gives weighing compared to OG, which you also enjoy. Should you still list that? Is that the question? Yeah, is that the question?
Yeah, you don't hear me very well?
No, now I do, but
okay. Sorry.
Yeah, so I think at that point, if it's important, mention it. Like if you just think like, hey, there is this big gap. OO does also other things in terms of the weighing. I can elaborate on that if you want me to. I think the main reason is this and that. talking about the gap that that OG has, then that's probably fair. Does that answer your question? I only heard like a bit of a laugh. I'm not sure if I.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm not sure if it's the technical stuff or if you're not saying anything at this point, but
No, I think she said yes. Maybe you can increase her volume on Discord. I don't know. I can hear her.
yeah, like I can hear Nia, but she seemed to be cutting out. But okay. All right. Let's talk about trait 2 then, specificity. Often heard feedback is the wing uses fake phrases like "I found X more convincing than Y." Be very specific. Talk about what specific analysis did the teams do and how did it affect the debates. And be very clear in how you're trading the two off. So although this may sound like a rookie mistake, I've also seen this happening a lot amongst more experienced panelists. This usually then happens when they think, yeah, okay, it was very clear that OG was defeating OO. Still, even on clear comparisons to a panel, the speakers will not always think it was as clear. So the chair will always aim for specificity, even in cases that it was super clear. So don't underestimate this and keep being super clear. Like, this specific analysis am I talking about? Because you're basically trying to go from the, and I'll go to that on more detail in a bit, from a macro level disagreement, two teams, one beats the other, to a micro level, like the very specific parts in the case that made one team beat the other team. Questions on specificity? Okay. Let's talk about responsivity. Because the feedback I've seen then is the wing gave good insights, but didn't pay a lot of attention to other contributions that were made during the deliberation. And this is one thing you don't want to hear. This may cause trouble on larger panels. Because when are there going to be larger panels? During out rounds. So you want to show that you can also partake well at the moment that you're on a larger panel. Be responsive. Because as I've flagged briefly, there is a macro level disagreement. One says OG wins, the other says OO wins. That's a kind of a macro level disagreement because that can be attributed to a lot of different reasons in a debate that took like 28 minutes. You want to go to a macro level, like which of the competing mechanisms in the same clash was better, for example. And in order to find exactly where the disagreement lies, we have to listen very well to the other judges, because for you, you may not even have thought about that particular mechanism because you thought it was so clear that OG explained it better than OO, but you still need to convince the other panelists of it. At the moment that happens, it's not enough to stay to your initial reason why you thought OG was being better. Because you may have different reasons, like the weighing or something. I don't know. That panelist at that moment needs to hear why the reason that they give is not the deciding reason in the debate. So answer their exact concern. And this is the mindset you want to have. You want to be a team player at that moment. You don't just want to win to show like you're the better wing to the chair. No, you want to act like treat it in a way like how you would want to be convinced. Like, go good faith, take their questions as something very reasonable, and address it accordingly. Also, sometimes chairs just want to chill and unleash the dog, because at the moment that you are able to do this job for them, and you can convince that wing for them, they will probably appreciate it. Like, yours is 3 days, rounds a day. They have to do this time after time. At the moment that you're able to take some of that pressure away from them, they will like that. So they will sometimes opt for the unleash the dog strategy. Oh, this is so sad. I had a animation of a dog flying through the screen, but that got messed up while transferring to Google Slides. Are there questions about responsivity? Okay. Let's go to step 3, which is finalizing your call. And here's trade 4, which if you ordinarily rank them, this should be trade number 1. This is the most important one. Be reasonable. The first is don't flip because you don't want to be difficult. If you're genuinely unconvinced by the chair or by the majority vote on the panel, it's perfectly fine to split. Don't flip just because, I don't want to be difficult. I don't want to be a nuisance to the panel. You won't be. If you do it in a respectful manner and you don't try to overtake the chair's position, you don't waste their time, then it's perfectly fine to not be convinced of it. There's a reason why we have panels. But also don't ego split. Don't feel like, now we had a discussion of 5 minutes. I actually think I am convinced, but at this moment, if I sway now, I will be seen as the bad wing. So I'm just going to keep my ego up and say, no, I'm still not convinced. Don't do that, because if you are a wing that, after a thorough discussion, can be persuaded on a comparison that probably was going to be close anyway, since you were disinclined on that and they needed longer time to convince you of it, you much rather have a wing that is pushing you back on this, might act like some kind of devil's advocate to make sure you thoroughly addressed that comparison and did not undersell one of the teams. I much rather have that than a wing that is just staying their ground and is just like, nope, I'm not convinced, no matter what kind of reasonable things you say, and not giving a proper response back on it, just keep staying to, I'm not convinced. Don't split because of your ego, only split at the moment you genuinely think the rest of the panel made the wrong decision here. The benchmark is here usually, would you be comfortable explaining your call instead of the chair? Then it's fine to split. That's not just some hypothetical experiment. Also, in case that you and another wing outnumber the chair, i.e. you roll them, the chair can ask you to give the call instead of them. Like, this is not something that they can ask and you can say no. You are obliged to, since the, I think, World's Constitution of 2023. Be reasonable. Questions on this? Then trade 5, transparency. This is one that chairs really like. First, ask yourself, what do I need to be persuaded in case there's disagreements? And communicate this to the panel. Like, in order for me to be flipped for OO, I need to buy that either the claim on privacy is more impactful than OG's claim on safety, or that OG's response to it is insufficient. Currently, I don't think so, so I'm still going for OG. If you could convince me of either of those, I'd be happy to go for OG. Then they know exactly where to cater the discussion to, and they will make sure they're not wasting anyone's time at that moment. You can have a very, very steered discussion to exactly the point that you would need to be convinced on. That doesn't mean that if they give one answer, you go like, yeah, I'm convinced. They still need to have a good answer, but they at least know what direction to go. So be transparent about what they need to go for. Like, I've seen this going back in feedback, and chairs would be like, and then that wing said, I need this to be persuaded, and I think that's excellent paneling. Oh, do that stuff. Transparency also means that after the fact, it's also still important. If you flipped, let's say I was initially for OG and I flipped for OO, explain why. It's important to do so for 2 reasons. Reason 1 is the chair will know that some of the concerns that you had on OG versus OO might also be in the heads of those teams. And that chair wants them to understand their call. Either because that chair is a very good person and they want to make sure that everyone feels understood, or because the chair just wants to break deep and wants to get good feedback. So that's reason 1. You give basically an insight in the other side's head by explaining what was the particular part that made you flip. But 2, it also shows that you're a competent wing, because you're not just flipping for any reason. You are flipping because you genuinely believe there is good reasons to be flipped. That's something that is really appreciated. The same goes for if you split. If you decide to split, don't make this a yep. Just shortly explain, okay, it's fine if you two choose the other side. I still believe for OO because I believe that's still I still believe OG because I think the claim on safety is still weighed well over the claim on privacy, like that. Then it's super clear for everyone on the panel, and you're transparent. Are there questions on transparency specifically, or either of the 5 traits I highlighted?
So this happened to me a few times, where, for example, I would have very different calls in the chair at first, but then what would happen is it's mainly because of who I attribute stuff to. So, for example, I had, let's say, OG in first, and the chair had like CG in first and OG in fourth, right? And then what ends up happening is because of like how we credit certain arguments to different teams. And then sometimes if we do that comparison, I need to change my call quite a bit. Is it okay to then go like, hey, I think because of the comparison flip, because we are now attributing different material to different teams, my call would then significantly change. Is that something you can just say? Because I always have trouble being like, yo, is this seen as like a good thing or not? I don't know.
No, that's definitely a good thing to do. Yes, because then you realize, hey, my call was based on attributing material to a team I should not have attributed the material to. Now I see what team I should attribute the material to. Let's now have a discussion on a higher level in which we both know what material we're crediting to what teams. So that's perfectly fair game to do. And otherwise, if you like, let's frame them oppositely. If you don't do it, you keep running into the same issue. Like, oh, but that material wasn't theirs. So yes, definitely do so. That's also a logical extension of trait 5 on the transparency.
All right, makes sense. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. Also, one thing on this is then the chair will be like, chill. Now I have to do a few less comparisons, probably. Cool. Feedback for CAs. Always make sure to do it. What do I fill out? So a certain blonde CA says the more text, the better. Euros is very big, like very, very big. There will be chairs and wings that they know. There will be judges that they do not know. And they want to make the break as meritocratic as possible. So it's very important to fill this out. What kind of stuff do you fill out? Well, for example, if the chair found something more important and you thought you didn't agree, this is stuff that's important to flag. Or if the chair gave everyone a fair chance to speak, if they didn't, also important to flag, but also important to flag if they did do this. Maybe you detected cases of ESL bias, gender bias, or any other types of bias. I know that particularly this year's Euro CA team is very committed to this, and they might even have a specific question on this. I don't know if they went through with it. I know they did it at certain prep-comps, at least at Utrecht Open. And if you think like, oh, but I'm just a wing, will they take my feedback seriously? Well, the thing is, yes. You are still the eyes and the ears of the CA team on the panel. If you write down very, very dumb stuff there, which is clearly like, oh, this is a very salty wing, they will probably be dismissive about your feedback. That's why it's important to take proper time to fill out the feedback, because if you are substantiating this well, you are reporting on this in a relatively neutral manner, they will at least look at it. Usually, they are very committed to having lots of times to go over feedback. Sometimes they have CAs sitting out certain rounds to go over all the feedback and tweak allocations based on that. So make sure to take proper time for this. And also, sometimes patterns can be discovered. Like, even if this is the most rappy, worlds-breaking judge that you're now giving feedback on, and the moment they discover a certain pattern, CAs won't hold back to acting upon it. And then they will be very happy if you were the one to discover this for them. If they see an anomaly happening in feedback, and they might decide to test that certain judge, they'd be very happy that you discovered this. So it's like, hey, this is a person that keeps giving us valuable feedback. Like, it's obviously, if your judging is not going to be good and you do this very well, it's probably not going to make a lot of difference. But if you're on the fence of whether you will break or whether you're not break, and you do this very well, they may use this as a tiebreaker. They will definitely use it as a tiebreaker if you do not fill out any kind of feedback. So this is good for both making the tournament as a whole better, but also you benefit from it yourself. Questions on this?
Yeah, actually, I don't know. I think I'm just a bit too nice because I always give around sevens and eights and then used it as a baseline to go above or lower. So eight would be like a like 7 and 8 would be like a normal one. And then if it's a bit better and low, I don't know how we should like kind of evaluate them because I think it's a bit ambiguous for me. Because sometimes we reach a call that like I agree with more, obviously, but then it's not about that. It's about how the discussion happened, I think. So I'm always a bit confused if I'm being too nice on the like feedback. I am really unsure. I think my feedback generally isn't that helpful to the CAs because of that.
Well, so firstly, have you seen like the scales before of how to assess chairs and wings? Because they have separate speaker skills to it, like similar to speaker skills, but then just with a 1 to a 10.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of comps, they just attach it also to TabbyCat somehow, or
Uh-huh.
like they print it out or something. So I do use it when it's given to me, but it's also like I think it's still a bit vague for like something could easily be for me a 7 or like a 9, or not a 9, sorry, like if I give a 7, it can also be like a 6 or a 8, right? Which is like still a big deviation because it's only out of 10 points. So
Uh-huh.
I tend to be on the safer side and be like, hey, let's not fuck someone up. But I also don't know if that's the right thing to do.
Well, so the let's not fuck someone up, I don't think is the right mentality to go about this. Because if you are the one that consistently is giving very nice points and someone else is not, then I hope I'll be judging every round with you. Because it might affect some degree the meritocracy of the break if some people just consistently give higher scores than others. I would say just have a very good look at those skills. I think the most recent ones have been quite comprehensive, in the sense that they tend to split it up between certain disciplines like accuracy, I think, panel management, and their own role in the discussion. And then you can also use the wording that they pick there, to make sure, like, does this still add up with the mark I'm giving at this point? But I agree, it's difficult sometimes. That's why also those text boxes are very important, because even if your ranking might be off, like you're giving a 7 whereas you should have given like a 6, which is a minor difference. But if they go over the text box and they see, well, Navid is not that happy, they can still factor it in. So make sure to use the text box and use it thoroughly.
All right. One last question on this. Sorry, it's taking a while.
We have
That
lots of
I
time.
sometimes also submit feedback. So, for example, I think in one of the competitions, I saw the chair just kind of ignoring the trainee. So they were nice to me, but like the trainee not. I can still report that in my one, right? Because I always report that but I'm
Yeah,
unsure if it's my job or the trainee's job to report that. I don't know.
definitely factor the fact in if they ignore trainees. The reason being, trainees, like, the idea of a trainee is we don't know stuff about the trainee, and we do want to know stuff about the trainee. We never get to know stuff about the trainee if the trainee doesn't speak. So it's only fair for their chances, if it's being flagged that the trainee didn't have a fair opportunity to speak up in the discussion. So definitely do so.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Sorry. I don't know. Thank you.
No, it's great questions, and we have lots of time. Like, I only have like a few slides left after this. Okay. Things I would have loved to know before judging UDC. The first is don't stress about allocations. Um, I've taken a screenshot of Alicia Filbier's record at, I think this was Zagreb Euros. Also, this is just, you can just find this stuff online, so I'm not like spreading sensitive data here. But this is what she did. Like, she was chairing until round 6. Round 7, she suddenly de-chaired. That doesn't mean she got demoted. This means that this is just the way that allocations work at Euros. Because there's this many rounds and this many teams will be dead on day 3. Like they have no possibility anymore to break. Obviously, they still deserve a correct call. The question is, do they deserve it as much as a team where second or third will make the difference between them breaking or not breaking? So what they end up doing is they usually stack panels on day 3. And people that were chairing on day 1 and day 2 will win on day 3. That's because they make not just a division between chairs and wings. They also have chairs that are going to be wings on day 3, or chairs that will be super chairs. Like the people that chair live rooms in the last rounds typically are going to be out-round chairs. So don't stress if you get de-chaired at some point. Also, sometimes they just want to test you in a certain way. So for example, the feedback that you've been given, if you were chairing, is has very good panel management. We're just not certain about their own accuracy. Because if you're a chair like me, I usually don't reveal my initial call even to the panel to prevent groupthink. But they might sometimes test me as a wing to see, can I also just do the skill of judging? There are many reasons why you can go from chair to wing. Also, sometimes you will do backtabbing or something, or even in the live rounds, in the open rounds, you will see, it's round 3, and I'm judging a 0-point room. Does not mean that they think you've done poorly so far. It's just always a product of different things. It's a product of your CV, of how you've been doing in previous rounds. But also there are factors that are outside of that. Like they want to rotate, because at the moment that you are in a lower room, usually it's likelier that teams get salty at you because they cannot comprehend all the stuff that you're judging upon. So they usually give lower feedback. And to balance that out, there needs to be rotation. There's stuff like regional representation. So they cannot put 5 Dutch people on one panel, and they will just have to put people elsewhere. There's clashes that they have to take into account. There is gender balance. There are so many things that factor into this. Don't start stressing at the moment that the allocation is not the allocation you would have hoped you would have. At the end, see every round as a round in itself and a round you want to do well. If you really think, there's going to be a certain chair, and I don't know about this chair, maybe I need some intel on this chair, you can always find me. I usually have intel on some chairs on what they like, but don't stress about allocations. Questions about this? Okay. Then, ask feedback from chairs. But I would also point out that let them know that you will be asking them for feedback. If they know in advance you are going to, they will probably be in a bit of a different mindset during the judging, because they will also already try to start collecting the feedback that they're going to give you. So usually you get better feedback if they know in advance that you're going to ask for it. Also ask if you think you didn't do so well on the round. Because I don't know, they can still put into perspective how you actually did. If you think you did really, really poorly, sometimes they can say, like, okay, this part didn't go so well, but all the other parts you still did well on. And even if you did very poorly, if they have to look you in the eyes first, they may go easier on you in feedback. You never know. So make sure to always do it. Learning a lot from it. Questions? Okay. 3. Judging heroes can be frustrating sometimes, because you have lots of different judges from different circuits. And I, at times, have judged at Euros and I thought, okay, this chair is super, super wrong. This chair is also doing a very poor job at the deliberation. This chair is finding me annoying. I don't think the chair is fair in doing so. This can happen. Be aware of this, and this might happen to you as well. Or you don't feel like the allocation was done fairly, like that you've done better than you've been allocated to. Like maybe you thought you deserved to break but didn't, or maybe you did break but you thought you deserved to break deeper. judging is annoying. I often discourage career judging because of this. It is annoying. You tend to plateau very easily. Always keep speaking as well. But yeah, it's part of the game. So if something happens, if something like that happens, I don't know. Go find me. Let's have a walk. Have a walk on your own. Unleash to some people that you trust on how awful that chair was. Trash them in feedback. Have good reasons in your feedback. But this happens sometimes, and it's normal. Questions? Okay. And I think final slide actually is use the learning opportunity. Like even if you don't break, it's very likely you're going to break every single comp after this because you have 9 rounds straight. You will judge with the best judges in Europe, who will do phenomenally. Even rooms that are not so great are usually still relatively good debates for the simple reason that not everybody goes to Euros. Usually they leave there very cute but have to learn a lot novices at home. So it will just be 3 days of judging very cool debates with very cool people. Enjoy it. It's a very good learning opportunity, and you will take all that information that you gather with you back to your institution, and you might do very fun stuff with it. So take that learning opportunity. That's everything I have. And now you see Ariette de Kom, who I don't know who that is. I stole her templates.